for all the people out there with a dream that just want to be seen. Yeah, my dream's bigger than the average.
Welcome to another episode of the Be Seen podcast. This is episode 16. Today, we have Peter Jukes, a Hollywood director, screenwriter, producer, a gentleman that spent a significant amount of time learning his craft in the short movie aspect, breaking into feature films, and there's no stopping this man. Peter, thank you ever so much for your time. Please share with everyone your journey. Where did it start? How did all this happen for you?
Well, you could go way back for that. I mean, I guess honestly, the journey started like a lot of other filmmakers. When I was a kid, I always knew I wanted to do this. Yeah. So I was making short films, little home video stories forever. I guess it became official when I went to college and went to film school. Yeah. And that was kind of like the moment. Am I really going to do this? Am I going to dedicate officially my life to this? And for me, it was a no-brainer, but I guess that's where it really started. I went to a film school in CU Boulder, and that was the start of what's been and what will continue to be a lifelong journey, right? And highs and lows and twists and turns and all the usual things you get in a filmmaking lifestyle. But went to film school. After I graduated, I went almost immediately out to LA and lived and worked there for 20 plus years. Learning everything I could from the ground up. And as you noted, I spent a significant amount of time doing a whole slew of short films. And each short film was a strategic challenge to myself, right? Some scripts I wrote specifically to work with kids, because from a directing standpoint, among other things, that's a challenge. Shooting nighttime exterior, special effects, dialogue, no dialogue, ensemble cast, two guys in a room, whatever. Each one was a specific challenge to kind of gauge where I was and where I needed to be, what I needed to work on, and things along those lines. So I did that for, I don't even know, 10 plus years, something like that. And around 2015 or so is when I officially made the jump into the feature world. I felt I was ready and had learned everything I could and was ready to cross into that new realm, because features, of course, are short films, long form, short form content. It's all filmmaking, but features are a different animal. Yeah. And, my first feature was Escape Room, and I learned a lot on that, and that's where all those years of working with no budgets on tight schedules finally paid off, because it was a very, very tight budget on that movie, a very, very tight shooting schedule. We were moving really fast, a lot of curveballs. You aren't prepared to handle that kind of stuff. I mean, you're going to sink pretty fast. I mean, it just comes flying at your face as a director, right? Even a smooth shoot is challenging. So when it's not, you kind of have to be ready for it. And that's where all those short films came into play for me. So that was my first. And I've been pumping out features ever since. And I have several more in development. And, as I post about this often, in certain places, but for me, the carousel never stops turning, right? You're always juggling several projects. Who knows which one of them are going to go through and reach the finish line? But all the lessons I learned early on have continued to help drive me forward as I aim to go to higher budgets, bigger projects, all those kind of things come into play. So this is where it's taken me. And my road is my road. Not everyone takes 10 years making short films. Some people jump right in and boom, they explode right onto the scene. Others, they need that time. So for me, that was the road that was most fitting for my needs. And it's the road I continue to follow now.
Oh, it's class. I love your short films. I love them. Your range is so impressive. From, I believe the film that you was referring to with the young child was Daniel.
Daniel, and there was another one. The first one I really took on was I wanted as many kids as I could. I wanted as much chaos as I could, and to see how I handle it was The Scarecrow and the Princess. Yeah. One night shoot, no money, kids everywhere, like young kids everywhere. Yeah. And it was a blast. It was hard, but it was a blast. Daniel came afterwards, and at least that one was a little more controlled. That kid had some experience, and he was an actor. Whereas Scarecrow and the Princess, outside of the little girl playing the princess, all the other kids came because I said, hey, there's going to be Halloween candy. You get to dress up. So show up.
Yeah.
So it was just madness, just great, fantastic little kids running everywhere with candy and toys or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I love working with the kids, and I want to continue to work with kids and really learn how to draw out performances that are tricky when these little kids are looking at camera and lights and crew, and it can be hard to get really natural performances out of them if that's what's required. And so I'm still working on that today.
I'll tell you something. I thought the performances, especially from the princess, was so good. So I thought it was really natural. Definitely. I love what you did as well with, was it Little Reaper?
Oh, Little Reaper to this day is probably the funnest shoot I've ever had.
Wow. Yeah, that was.
And Little Reaper herself, her name was Athena. She's one of those girls that she came in, and within 30 seconds of the audition, I knew it was her. Didn't even need to see anyone else. The film shoot itself was just a blast, and horror comedy was not something I'd really had an opportunity up until that point to really jump into, but I knew I wanted to, and so I wrote that project, and just it was fun. It was really fun, and I've had some films that are pretty heavy and somber or dark from time to time, and I'll usually intersperse something like Little Reaper in between those, just something to keep it light and fun and just some escapism.
Yeah, no, I noticed that you mixed it up. I mean, like Last Goodbye, I believe it is.
Yes.
The dialogue in that is unbelievable.
Yeah, that one, if I remember correctly, was a little actually dialogue heavy, maybe even a little bit too much. I've learned to kind of edit myself down a bit since then, but the story itself was something that meant a lot to me, and that's one of my favorite short films, and no one's seen it. It's one of those that it's old, it's not shot in 4K, it's a little dark, we didn't have a lot of money to shoot it, so on and so forth. So there's a few of my films, and They Watch is another one that just I've never really gotten many views, and they're 14 years old and no one's ever going to watch them. But yeah, the Last Goodbye is one that kind of hits a soft spot with me.
I thought it was incredible. I thought it was amazing. I love the way that your characters, I love the dialogue, speak really clearly, and it's effective. And the subjects you speak about as well, it's class. It's not just like the stereotypical filler, just like standard conversation. It's thought-provoking. It makes you think. And I noticed there's a theme, within your short films of actually confronting death after death, where you go after death. It kind of runs through some of your short films. And it's almost as if you're exploring different sides constantly in this interdimension, like with the Goblin's Tale. I thought A Goblin's Tale was out of this world. Out of this world.
That was another fun. That was a hard one, but it was fun. Yeah, I love fantasy.
I can see it in you. You like the fairy tale side, the way that you speak in The Scarecrow and the Princess. It's very, very intelligent stuff. And you go away. What I love at our core, we're film lovers. We're film lovers. We like to know we've watched a movie. And like, for instance, okay, a few nights ago, I'd never seen it, but I finally got down to watch it. Interstellar. And I was blown away. I was blown away. You can actually have a film that makes you cry. I'm not ashamed to say it makes you, the emotions spill out. And I believe that you have that. Not everybody does. Not everybody has that ability to do that, to make you go away, feel warm or feel an emotion, and it linger with you after it's finished. And
and that's right. That's our job. Is one of the things that interested me about being a storyteller is to make a movie. And I'm all for just going and eating popcorn and having a blast. There's absolutely a place for that. But I also am interested in doing pictures that you don't forget about the moment you leave the theater, right? They sit with you. Yes. And they can change the way you look at yourself in the world, and they can get inside kind of, bone deep and scare you, or make you sad, or make you really happy, or make you fall in love all over again. Whatever emotions you're looking to invoke, I think that's one of the most powerful things about films. And I hope to make something that really, really resonates with myself and with an audience one day. I think I've had some pictures that are teasing the line, but have I ever really gotten there? Will I ever get there? For a filmmaker like me, who's a little bit of a perfectionist, I think it'll be a lifelong journey. I don't know if I'll ever make my masterpiece, but as long as I'm, driving for that and always striving to be better and making these stories interesting and engaging, I think for me, that's part of the victory. As long as I'm trying to do it, I'm already halfway there. Right. And, so I'm glad that you've enjoyed some of my work. And you're absolutely right. I think about, and not in any kind of macabre way, but I think about time and the passage of time in the past and in the future and death quite a lot. So it does get kind of sprinkled into a lot of my material, regardless of genre.
Oh, absolutely. You can. It's the sense of it is strong, but you don't smother people with it. You don't smother people. You've
Yeah.
allowed it's there. It's very evidently there, but you explore it in such a way that there's so much more. There's so
Yeah.
much more to your work, and massive, massive, massive fan. Have been for a long time from afar, but really studying your work, and I really went in on it. I think there's two different types of audience. There's passive and there's analytical. I think those that tip over into becoming filmmakers, they're analytical because they see something. And I know as a kid, I'd rewind it back again and again and again. It's almost like a compulsive disorder. You need to understand what you're seeing. You got to break
Yeah.
it down. I have to dissect it. I think that's what is the beginning of a filmmaker, is that they want to understand. They appreciate moments in a film that others don't, such as the way the light hits a character's face or the way the camera was positioned for it. It's things that it either calls out to you or it doesn't. That's how I've always felt.
Oh yeah.
It really, really hit me. And I have a question for you in terms of your screenwriting process. Are you someone that gets it all out your system and then, organizes it after? Steve Bernstein's very like that. He'll just vomit it out, then organize it. What's your process in writing, your films?
Each project, in my experience, is it's an organic process, and it's ever changing and ever evolving. So my process changes per project. Especially if it's a passion project versus something that's, I'm writing just to sell it. Because some of my projects I write because I know exactly what the producers are looking for. This is what they're looking for. I write it just for them. Others, are something that is really important to me. So I will strive to make it marketable enough that it has a chance at life, but it has a deeper meaning to me. So those different type of projects, certainly the genre comes into play. Some stories the inspiration just hits me and I got to jump right into it. Others I need to kind of, let gestate for months, even years before I'm ready to pull them out. So depending on all these factors, it affects how I approach it. Sometimes I just know the story so well, and it's just, I'm so in sync with it that I can just lay down and just pump out a first draft. Just done. And it's a first draft that's darn near close shootable. Other times I have a concept that's really strong, but I really need to fully flesh out a complete outline before I even begin a page and forget it. I want to know exactly every little piece, every obstacle, every act, before I proceed. And because I cut my teeth on having to write really quickly with low budgets and writing so many short films and even feature films that are never see the light of day, I've become very adept at working quickly and producing first drafts that are pretty strong first drafts. Doesn't mean there won't be 9 rewrites, but I typically am not the guy who puts out what often is called the vomit draft, which is, I think, what you're alluding to, where let's get the idea out onto paper in the best way we can, and then we'll clean it all up and we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
But let's just sucker out so we see what we're looking at and let's figure it out from there. I know a lot of people who do that, and that's a perfectly, whatever your process is your process. I don't do a whole lot of that, which isn't to say there hasn't been some vomit-esque material in some of my first drafts, but I typically have a little bit more of an organized approach to my first draft, and then I take it from there. And certainly with some of the jobs I'm hired to do or I've been hired to do in the past, they're not $1 million jobs, they're not $500,000 jobs. It's 5,000, it's 10,000, whatever it is. It's not all the money in the world. So I don't give them 6 months of my life. They'll get 30 days, 45 days, whatever it is. And so I don't have the time to give them several drafts until it's an absolute masterpiece. They'll usually get a first draft, a second pass, maybe a third pass. So the writing needs to be fairly strong off the bat, and then you can kind of mold it and shape it and polish it up from that standpoint. So typically that's how I work. As I get a feel for whatever the project's going to be, whether it's one of my own personal specs or I'm being hired to come aboard, which I've done for a couple of jobs over the last month and a half. All of that affects how I'm going to approach it, and I think it'll always be a little bit organic and changing for me.
Yeah, that's class. In terms of for yourself, okay, you've had screenplays options sold. You've with Escape Room, I believe you wrote it. Was it in 3 days?
What was the deal with Escape Room? It wasn't 3 days, but I knew I wrote it very quickly because that was one where I just hit the beats. This is what they're looking for. I just checked all the boxes. It wasn't a passion project. So I wrote it very quickly, not in 3 days, but I think I may have had it option sold in 3 days, or at least under a week. It was really fast.
Yeah, rapid.
Yeah, very rapid. And I think they had the money within 48 hours and it was straight into pre-production. It was kind of insane.
It's like, it literally is Hollywood dreams are made. You could write a screenplay just about that, getting
that was the one that was off of Craigslist, which
love that.
Which is ridiculous. But that's just how that one came together, right? And I learned a lot of lessons with Escape Room. I enjoyed parts of it. I didn't enjoy other parts of it. It's Escape Room was what I've learned throughout my years is every experience is a good experience, whether it's enjoyable or not, because each of it teaches you something. I learned a lot with Escape Room that I've taken into, whatever features have come my way after that.
I honestly believe, and I said this to you on a message, and this isn't smoke. This is my honest opinion. I have watched that many films. I am obsessed with films, and I am obsessed with writing films. I'm obsessed with every part of it.
You almost have to be borderline obsessive.
I'm talking like not borderline, Pete. I'm talking 2 feet on my arms. I'm there. I'm there. I've watched a lot of bad films on purpose as well to understand why it doesn't work, what's happening, what makes a good actor, what doesn't, and direction, the lot. And I'm going to tell you something now, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, honestly. You'd mentioned about, you have literally gone on the budget spectrum from starting with nothing to getting some more. I honestly believe, I'd read a tweet you'd put out that you are in conversation about an 8-figure budget, you're going to be involved in a project. I believe when you have the right budget, the way that you film, the stories that you tell, the things that you talk about, I honestly believe you're going to become one of the biggest directors in the world. I really do. I really, really believe it. I can see it. I think you are not even a step away. I really do, because it just takes the right film, the right time, but said the right way.
It does. Yeah, it certainly does. And I do think that working with no money and minimal equipment, minimal editing, for so many years taught me to really dive into each scene. I didn't have the ability to shoot, coverage from 50 different angles and to have every light in the world and so on and so forth. So it really taught me to find the important things about each scene and tell it right. And if you have more toys to play with, have a blast with it. But I think you need to understand the heart of each scene within the overall concept. And should I get bigger projects one day and move on, I think utilizing that experience will come in handy. Because if you don't have that experience, all of a sudden you could find yourself with a budget where, you've got cranes, you've got whatever you want. And I think it can kind of make your head spin a little bit. It can take away your focus if you can't kind of keep your eye on the ball and keep your eye on what's important, and then use what you need. Right. So I certainly hope that, do I need to be the biggest director in the world? No, my goal has always been to be able to make a comfortable living and provide for my family and have a blast making films until I die. I don't need to be famous. I don't need to be rich. I just, if I can do that for a living, that's great, because for many years, almost pretty much all my years living in Los Angeles, I was doing all these movies, all of it on the side. I had a full-time job. It's expensive in LA, right? And I have, again, I have kids. So me and the vast majority of filmmakers I knew were all working side jobs or full-time jobs, and then writing our scripts overnight or shooting on weekends or whatever it took. So the goal for most of those guys who aren't, kind of big time or on the track to be big time, we just want to be able to do it for a living. That's the dream in of itself, and everything else is just gravy.
100%. You're pure film. It's all about the passion, and I love that. The one thing that I never want to be famous. It doesn't do anything for me. I don't need flash clothes, flash cars, flash watches. I'm not interested in none of it. I'm interested in solely my passion. But sadly, when you are in the public eye, when you are putting out, which this is what people, I think, overlook or miss. A film is a product. A film is a product, because the economy of a film, from producers getting involved and studios, they want a return. And this is what I think aspiring screenwriters need to maybe be exposed to more. You'd mentioned that when you was at college, which I listened to in your other interview, that you had actually studied, films and how they're made and all the rest of it. But to actually understand how a film's made, it was done by doing it. And also from taking a script and it being sold, it was understanding, what do the studios want? We have to break away from what we want versus, okay, we want this, but we have to trade off constantly. It's got to be marketable. And people miss that sometimes as well, is it needs those universal presence, of like life or death or romance or love, or these things that actually inspire audiences. And when you mentioned about beats, it's broken down the psychology of the psyche, of all the different characters in Greek mythology. It's very, very interesting stuff. And I think that with films, and with it being a product, when it puts bums on seats in cinemas or it circulates streams, it's big business, big business. And I think that your face, when it's on that and it reaches so many people and so many eyes, I think it's out of your control. But it's lovely to know that isn't your pull. And I kind of knew that already. That isn't what you're in it for. You're in it for the love of the film. It's the art. And where you'd mentioned chasing the perfection, I don't think we'll ever attain it, because you might attain it today. You might get a cut and go, yes. 10 years from now, you might not. I think it's natural to look back and go, now what I know, I change that. Or now what we have available to film with, I do it this way. You'll never stand still.
I mean, I think to each their own. I know I can only speak for myself. And with me, am I a perfectionist to the point of never being able to enjoy it? No, I still get excited with every job I get. I love being on set. I love seeing a film that you came up with in your mind be released and the poster comes out and all this stuff. I've had a film get theatrical deal. That was a dream when I was a kid, to get a film to actually be on the big screen, the silver screen. All these things still excite me every time. The day it stops being exciting is the day I need to find something else to do, because it's too hard of a career if you don't get that creative fulfillment out of it. So I'm not a perfectionist enough to the point where I don't enjoy it still, but absolutely, you're right. And as I'd mentioned earlier, like that little perfectionist in me that wants that script to be a little better, that film to be a little better, will always be there, because it is a collaborative process. Coming up with an idea is a big battle. Writing a great script is a big battle, but then taking this and working with a team, often with people you don't necessarily know all that well, and utilizing that team to bring it to life in exactly the way in your mind, I don't even know if that's possible. It hasn't happened to me yet. The films that I end up producing, by the time they're done, are always in some way, shape, or form not quite what I had in mind. And often it's a pleasant surprise. Sometimes it's not. right? But that's that's the that's the art we live within. Is it's such an organic process. You never know exactly what you're going to get. And I think it's always going to be something that's challenging and exciting, all these things together, that we do. And I've got some real doozies on the way. So if you do follow me or you follow my work, I have some interesting ones coming.
Yeah, I can't wait. I can't wait. What advice would you give for, aspiring or new in the game screenwriters, in terms of writing a screenplay? Like almost, you've now been exposed in the industry, successful, and there's a version of you in the past that, we all start from scratch. Everybody does. What would your advice be to them when they're writing their screenplay? Things not to do and things maybe to do a bit more of?
Well, I mean, as you're aware, there's whole books on the subject, right? And if you ask 10 different people, you get 10 different answers. I think typically for me, if I'm giving concrete advice other than like believe in yourself, keep trying, all that usual stuff, which is completely legitimate. If I were to give any like actual concrete advice, above the 50,000 other bits of advice that are all important also, with me and the kind of writer I am, I would say, if you're looking to become a screenwriter, then write and write and write and write and write as much as you can, write as many scripts as you can. Chances are you're not going to be very good at first, which is completely natural. Write 20 scripts. And on top of that, read as many scripts as you can. My writing started to evolve and get better only after I had written Lord knows how many scripts and started to find my voice. I'm not trying to emulate anybody. I'm finding my own voice and my own style and what my strengths are. And that came from writing and from reading as many great scripts as I could. So a lot of these things you can find online nowadays. Look up new scripts, old scripts, classic scripts. They're all different styles, different genres. Read them all. There's in all my reading, I've only read only a handful where I'm reading and I'm like, this is amazing. This is an amazing, amazing writer, where I can't even feel myself turning the pages. Like you just are envisioning the movie. It's incredible. And I've through the years read scripts like that or close to that, or a writer who's on their way to getting there. And I'm like, this is where I need to be. What can I learn from this script? What are they doing that I'm not? And it's not about copying their dialogue style or their exact style of writing, but what are they doing to pull me into such a degree where like you can just read it and by the time you're done, you're like, I don't even know where that time went. I feel like I've seen the movie. And that's still a process that I'm, even after 20 plus years, I'm working on now. I'm always striving to make my scripts better and more immersive and to just pull the reader in. And my writing now is, galactically better than it was when I started. And I think that will be for most readers. So, again, that my, as a starting point, if nothing else, write as much as you can and read as much as you can. And you will get better and find your own voice. And from there, of course, all the other challenges you'll come to, you can address those in terms of, where do I take my scripts? Where do I go from here? How do I get this thing produced? All those things, that's the next step. Worry about becoming the best absolute screenwriter you can be. And all that other stuff, you'll figure out when you get there, as we all do, as every great screenwriter does, they figure it out and we will too. And sites like yours, and they'll fill in the gaps. Like there's a lot of avenues available today that weren't there when I was coming up. And much like you've put together your site, and your podcast and all that stuff, is give some guidance to writers that I never had and might ease their transition and their journey a little bit.
Yeah, that's class. I love that. I think I'm a huge fan of selfless acts and just trying to pass back. You know what I mean? Because once upon a time we were there, and it's lonely, and it's nice to have good advice and for maybe 5 minutes of your day. And I know you've got a very hectic schedule, but to someone it means the world. Do you know what I mean? It's like they carry that. It's like you get people, say for instance, a normal person in society meets someone who they consider a hero or famous, and they have a conversation. Now, that famous person is having this probably every minute. Do you know, someone's coming up, they love them, picture, this, that. Now, the person that isn't famous, that walks away with the words that famous person says, lasts with them forever. It's almost like a cornerstone of advice that they live by them. Do you know, it's huge. And, you know, massive respect to you for doing that. It's quality. And I love you, the post you put out and sharing your journey, speaking about what you've done and how you felt at the time and where you're heading. It's brilliant because, you know, it shows they say that history repeats itself. The journey is a path. It's the same as the beats within the screenplay. It is a path. And the path will always be unique to your story, but it still needs to see certain signposts that we're in this territory now. Territory can be different, but we know we're there. And I think that's class. What would the Peter Jukes of 2023, the man that you are today, you know, the family man, the guy that's had a feature film made, and also one in a script, I believe it was Portal, that you sold and got made, and this array of fantastic short films. What would this Peter Jukes say to the Peter Jukes of 2006 and 5, or just in college and doing his thing? What would you say back to him now?
You know, that's an interesting question. You know, part of me instinctively wants to say, you know, buckle up. It's going to be a crazy ride. Part of me wants to say, you know, the usual stuff. Keep believing you're going to get there. You're going to reach your dream, or you're on your way. But the reality is, honest to God, I always knew I was going to get there. Even for I always knew what I wanted to do. I knew that it was not going to be easy. I knew that, listen, this is not going to be a 5-year thing. Like, this is going to be lifelong. It might be 20 years before you get a feature done. I already knew all that. So I wouldn't have any advice like that to give myself. I probably, you know, would come up and give myself a pat on the back. Which I'm not big on pat on the back. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
It's just that, you know, it alludes back to what you said. Like, we become kind of obsessive about it. We suffer for our art. Artists often suffer. And being a filmmaker is a very challenging career. There's a lot of fun. There's a lot of love. I wouldn't do anything else in the world, but it's not always easy. So I would go back and give myself a pat on the back and say, listen, I mean, the good times are going to be there throughout, and I'm sorry for the rougher times, and just hang on, right? I think they kind of go hand in hand in this career. So I give myself a pat on the back along with every other artist out there, because everyone's going through the same thing. Often guys who are even big time and famous. It's a challenging career that can kind of grind away at times, right? It's very difficult. So then that's another reason I always shout out to all the filmmakers out there, right? Because I have so much admiration for those who dedicate their life to this stuff, and they have to take the lows with the highs. And for some artists out there, the lows are more than the highs, right? It's hard to break through. I have a lot of respect for guys like that who keep pushing through despite that stuff. So that I suppose that's a starting point. What I would say to myself, you know, hang on, buddy.
I think that's that's
yeah.
Do you know who I was really impressed by? I forget the title of was it Madness? Love is Madness.
Oh, Sweet Madness.
Sweet Madness. Is it Melanie Wade?
Madeline.
Madeline Wade. Oh my God.
Yeah. She was another one that had the part like 20 seconds into our audition. I was like, there it is. She's the one. She's the one. I've been meaning to work with her again. I just haven't had the right script and variables and role that have come up. But she was natural. And she had, you know, she's been around in the business a long time, and she has not always gotten due credit for her talent level. And so she hasn't always gotten offers or script roles that I think allow her to blossom. And she's been around forever. So, you know, if I ever get the right role, I would totally return to her, because I think she has so many places she could go and do as an actress that she doesn't always get the opportunity to do. And if I could ever give her that opportunity, I totally would again, because she is the anchor of that movie. And it's a short movie, but I think for her role, it leaves an impression, I would say.
Charisma. What I identified, my personal opinion, what makes the greatest actors in the world is charisma.
Yeah.
There's just something. There's something you can't take your eyes off them. You don't want to take your eyes off them. They are just captivated. They arrest your attention. You were saying, I love what you said about the didn't realize you turned the page. Is that good? They have that quality. 3 hours have gone, mesmerized, and she has that. She has that. It's the way that she, like, her features, her face, her winks, her this, her that, the way she moves. It's just, I could not take my eyes off her. I thought she was just incredible, from her performance. And I was just, I don't want this to stop. I don't want this to stop.
I think she was just having a blast at doing a role she doesn't usually get to do. I think she just took it and ran with it. And sometimes actors and actresses, that's a hard career too, right? They just never, or don't often enough, get a chance to do what they really, what they really excel at, or what they really want to do. So when they get that opportunity, even if it's some low budget short film, they just hang on, right? And she did that. I thought she just came in and was like having a ball, and so it brought this effusiveness, this radiance and liveliness to her performance that I don't know if I would have gotten with someone else, right? So no, that was a pleasure to work with her and with everyone on that film, really. And that's another one that's one of my favorites. It's a super simple thing. It's the only fan film I'll likely ever do, only because I love Harley Quinn. And I was like, forget it, I'm going to do a fan film this one time, and ended up having a blast with it.
Peter, I know you're a busy man. I know, you have to attend back to business. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. And, the areas that you've discussed and give insight to has been wonderful. Thank you ever so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And to the audience, another episode in the bag. Stay great, everybody. Be seen. Thank you.